Welcome to this episode of Against the Mountains of Madness. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm John Wright.
And on this episode, we're going to be exploring the idea trapped in the holodeck. So, John, trapped in the holodeck, what does that mean? How do we know we are not?
In many science fiction stories, people have explored the idea, which comes from Buddhism and from Gnosticism, that everything around us could just be an illusion. Everything could just be fake. All of our sense impressions could be lying to us. Descartes speaks about it, and science fiction writers have often taken stories and run with it.
So, how do we know we are not living in a simulation? How do we know that the world is real and not simply an illusion?
I mean, come on. Everyone lives his life as if it's real life. You can't not live your life as if it's real. So we all know reality is real. I'm not sure why you're asking the question.
Well, that's true. Computer and program. Well, this is awkward.
Well, you make a point. It is possible to be mistaken about what our senses tell us or to have false ideas. We all know that. It's part of the human condition. But there's been several movies made and a number of good books that just deal with this theme, including books that start with the main character being an amnesiac who doesn't know what's going on, or the main character is toppling end over end in a mist and hearing whispering voices telling him reality is not real, or with the main character who his brain has been reprogrammed, and so he doesn't actually, know anything about what's really going on. And there's also been stories about people who actually are trapped in an electronic illusion of one sort or another. They're trapped on the holodeck and they can't get off and they can't find their way back to reality. I think the most famous movie that did this recently was The Matrix, which if you haven't seen, I just have to recommend.
It's 20.
It's got.
The Matrix is a 20-something. It's not recent anymore. We're old.
You and I have different time scales. To me, it seems like because the idea had been treated so thoroughly in books written in the 40s and 50s, to me, a story made in the 2000s. To me, the year 2000 is still in the far future. So you just have to.
Fair enough.
Just pretend you're speaking with the sleeper from H.G. Wells.
Fair enough.
And to me, it seems like a recent movie.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, it changed the way photography was done for all sorts of action movies. The idea of the circular pan slow-mo and doing all your kung fu in super slow motion was really cool. And they did it. The Wachowski brothers, back when they were brothers, did a really good job of it. Speaking of people who don't know what's real and what's not real. But no, they still make good art. I'm not gonna judge them on their personal wreckage they've made of their personal lives, because I'm not responsible for them. But there's another movie that came out the same season that deals with the same theme that, in my personal opinion, was much better.
Okay.
And I say this is a personal opinion because I like the movie mostly because it reminded me of many of these films that I've just met, many of these books from the 50s that I just mentioned, that treated with whether or not reality is real, whether or not you're being deceived by a world-girdling conspiracy. And it was called Dark City. It was made by Alex Proces, whose name I can't pronounce, who's also the guy who did The Raven and other movies that apparently, as it turns out, I'm the only one old enough to remember. The premise in Dark City is that a guy with amnesia wakes up in a bathtub and realizes that he's a serial murderer, and the police are looking for him. But he doesn't feel like a serial murderer. He knows he's not capable of killing anyone. And he tries to find out who he is and where he's from and what his name is and so on and so forth. And he also finds out that little strange things happen around him, like he can stare at a locked box at a laundromat and break open not a laundromat, at an auto kitchen, and break open the window, just by thinking at it. And then he realizes that there's creepy men in long black coats who look like something from a German expressionist movie with switchblade knives that are coming for him, including a little pale dwarf, who apparently are undead or aliens or spirit beings or something. He doesn't know what they are. And his wife, his estranged wife, gets involved, and so does a policeman who's trying to solve the mystery that drove the previous officer on the job mad, drove him insane. Now, since we're talking about this in the context of a world where reality is unreal, obviously I don't need to say spoiler warning, but things are not as they seem in that film,
No.
and it has some of the cleverest uses of like a science fiction technique that I've ever seen on a film. And the ending I found to be immensely satisfying. And they also play Rite of Spring during the final battle sequence when the entire city is being warped and distorted around them by means of overwhelming psychic powers. So and stars an actress who I just think is drop dead gorgeous. The same young lady who was in Labyrinth, Jennifer Connelly.
Okay.
And but same theme, same year, same time. But everyone remembers The Matrix from so long ago, and almost no one remembers Dark City but me.
No, I remember Dark City. I enjoyed that. It was an interesting film.
But the Matrix put forward in an easy-to-grasp fashion a philosophical concept of saying, what if this world is a deception? What if we are trapped in a matrix of deception created not for our benefit, created for the benefit of the people who are exploiting us? Now, in the movie, they said they were being exploiting for battery power, which is, as a science fiction idea, is kind of stupid. But as a metaphor, as an idea for how to show how worthless, how exploited a person is, to be used only for the electricity in your body, is a brilliant metaphor. But if you think about it, it's not going to make any sense. And I think you were about to say it. Apparently they were going to do something else.
Originally, it was supposed to be the humans were being networked. Their brains were being used for computing power or something like that, as opposed to being used as batteries, which is completely physically ridiculous.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
But I hope you agree with me that no matter how physically ridiculous it is, it's a more gripping metaphor. It punches you in the gut, whereas finding out that your unused brain space is being used for computer power is not as humiliating. You see,
that's true,
because human brains are still being held to be worthwhile. But if we're being used for battery power, and Morpheus just holds up a little D cell to show how small it is. So I have to, as a science fiction writer, I have to look down my nose at an idea that doesn't make any sense scientifically. But as a moviegoer, I have to go, oh come on, that's as awesome as Keanu Reeves learning kung fu. It was Keanu Reeves, wasn't it, or was it someone else?
Keanu Reeves, yep. Yes.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of his most famous roles after the Bill and Ted's movies.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
And the John Wick ones these days, I suppose. But anyway.
The second movie...
I digress.
The second movie I also liked, even though I only liked the fight scenes, and if I ever rewatch it, I just fast forward past all the talking. Because what happened is they tried to get a little too heavy-handed with their philosophy in the second film. If you build the philosophy into the storytelling, so that the main character Neo, the One, turns out to be a secret king, a secret prophet, the chosen one, the Messiah who's going to lead people out of the Egypt of the illusory world into perfect freedom. Your plot doesn't have to make that much sense. You can have them do things like stick giant robotic worms inside your stomach or wipe your mouth away. And then later in the fight scenes, they don't have that power to do that to you anymore for some reason.
Yeah.
I've never understood why they couldn't just flip a switch and turn off your kung fu power that you just flipped a switch and downloaded into your brain. But be that as it may, that's me being a science fiction critic and nitpicking. In terms of the look and feel of it, the thing was as gorgeous as any Japanese anime. It was slick looking, and the main character dresses like a Roman Catholic. So I, as a Roman Catholic, approve of Roman Catholic ninjas beating up evil computer men. But I like the second movie better than the first for one reason. In the second movie, there was a falsehood on top of a falsehood, because apparently the Oracle, who was in the first movie was just had a mystic power, in the second movie turned out to be a computer program that was also deceived and also deceiving him. And the truth was actually somewhere buried deeper, you see. And he was told that the whole idea of the Neo, of the One, who was going to save everyone, that was also part of a trick.
Yeah.
See, so that was really kind of that was an interesting way to peel away the next layer of the onion of conspiracy, because if you're writing a conspiracy theory thriller, even a metaphysical conspiracy theory, which is what the Matrix was, because metaphysics is the science of dealing with reality, fundamental reality. And if you can't trust your senses and you can't trust whether or not fundamental reality is real, that's as exciting as finding out that spies are taking over your government. But in this case, agents have taken over reality.
Yeah.
So how do you fight that? How do you get out of that? See, it's quite interesting as a concept. Now, having said all that, I still prefer Dark City because it did not have any gaffes or goofs or silliness. It looked really good. It was really slick, and the ending made sense. Also, the third Matrix movie is not really worth watching.
No, it's not. I mean, it ends the series. I guess it sort of ties everything together, but yeah. And the fourth one, the less said about the better.
I wasn't even aware there was. Oh no, I did know there was a fourth one. It was called Matrix Cash Grab, wasn't it?
Something like that. I haven't seen it. Yeah. I've heard some reviews of it, and it just doesn't sound. It doesn't even sound worth watching as a train wreck.
Unlike Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ant-Man and Quantumania, I want to watch because it sounds like it's an absolute train wreck, but sounds like it'll be fun to watch as a train wreck.
It does sound like a train wreck. Yeah.
So
yeah. I feel the same way because I'm an Ant-Man fan from way back. So, be that as it may. On Star Trek, they've occasionally had shows where they wanted to use the holodeck for something. And the holodeck is a hard thing to put into a story because it's basically like having a story about a storyteller telling a story.
Yeah.
Where you and the character in the story know nothing is real and there's no stakes at heart. I mean, the most that will happen is you'll lose the game. So they have to have an accident. They have to have the Enterprise struck by lightning or something, so that the transporter buffer was accidentally downloaded into the holodeck memory bank, so that if anyone dies in the game, their real person dies in real life, which is what they did, by the way, also in Matrix. They did the same thing. They said if you die in the game, you die in real life, which makes no sense, but we'll give it to them. They have to have something.
At least,
yes?
I mean, with the holodeck, yeah, that's required for drama purposes. But I mean, in the real world, we play computer games like that all the time. And it would just be the next level of immersion.
Sure.
And it would be.
But we don't.
It would be dramatic and exciting and fun in exactly the same way Call of Duty or whatnot is.
Well, only if. But in Call of Duty, you're not telling the story about Call of Duty. You're telling the story about the war.
Yeah. Oh, no, I see what you're saying.
In order to make it an interesting story about storytelling, you have to say, if I win my law case in the game, I win it in real life. Or you have it be that the computer game is computer hackers trying to get past the security, so that if they overcome the dragon in the fictional version, they actually get past the AI who is guarding the secret code to the the weapon platform code or something. You say you have to give it real world stakes.
Oh no, I get it. I have to ask the question: why on earth?
Sure.
I mean, why on earth would Starfleet allow holodecks on their ships, based on the number of episodes where the entire ship is put in danger by this recreational facility?
I don't know. You have to ask why they have bowling alleys. On the original blueprints for Star Trek, there was a bowling alley aboard the ship. And in the original blueprints for the Star Trek, the Klingons, they had a shooting gallery for live animals. So I guess you have to be, recreation in space. If you're trapped aboard a submarine or the equivalent.
Oh no, that makes sense.
In outer space, I guess you need some because on the holodeck you could go for a walk in the park, whereas otherwise you're just trapped in a can.
That's true, but how often does it nearly end in disaster?
If
they're so dangerous and malfunction prone.
But the hologram doctor from Star Trek Voyager saved their lives many times, and the emergency medical hologram was one of the best characters in the show.
That's true.
You got to give him a little credit.
Actually, that's true.
Now,
do you remember that episode where he became the emergency command hologram and he was having daydreams?
No, I did not. I did not see that one.
The whole episode is he's getting more and more erratic because he's programmed himself to have daydreams of being the emergency command hologram, and it's great because he becomes it and his uniform goes red and then he gets little pips appear to become the captain. And some aliens were observing the ship, but they were basically observing his daydreams. and they were getting progressively more terrified of how dangerous Voyager was because the Borg turned up and the emergency command hologram gave a command and like these lightning weapons are destroying the Borg cubes. It's just, it's such a great, it's just a wonderfully entertaining episode. I think it's like season 6, but
It is wonderful.
oh, I liked that. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
But the interesting, no, it's no digression at all because it's right on our topic. The interesting question there is, since he's a hologram anyway, how unreal are his daydreams? Because he doesn't exist. He's just a collection of brain engrams recorded into an electronic matrix. He's not real, or is he? Does he have a soul? If you turn him off, does he go to heaven?
I don't know.
Does he have a conscience?
Well, I suppose.
Does he have a conscience?
I suppose it depends what you mean by turn him off. You can clearly shut him down and start his program up again later, and he experiences that as a. Ooh, so potentially, potentially
also...
the afterlife is populated with thousands and thousands of copies of the Doctor as he is killed each time they turn him
off. Yes and no. Yes and no, because how do we know they don't have reincarnation in that universe?
Oh.
He could just pop over to the afterlife and then pop back, depending on his karma. Or men do sleep, and men sometimes even go into comas without being dead.
That's true.
You see.
Actually,
yes?
Did you ever read the Reality Dysfunction series by Peter F. Hamilton?
No, I heard it was really good, but I did not ever get a chance to read it.
In it, something goes wrong, and spirits from beyond are coming back and taking people over in the world today. It's a great series. It's an interesting sort of naturalistic take on there being an afterlife. I recommend it. I enjoyed it. It's long, but it's a good read.
Well, a lot of people recommended it. It's on my list of books to read. I just haven't gotten around to it.
But what turns out is happening is when someone dies, their soul. It's explained more in the book, but basically their soul travels to the next world, and they can dimly see this world. But you're supposed to go on from there, but lots of the people are stuck, just able to dimly see back into their sort of former lives, and they think they're in hell and whatnot. But there's a character who's had a long, continuous life by copying his intelligence, growing a new clone, disposing of the old body, and putting his intelligence in the new body.
Yes,
but
that always turns out well.
Well, but what I thought was interesting was he then had the realization that effectively there'd be a whole lot of copies of him that when that body was destroyed has gone to the afterlife at that point, and then he's continued living as a different person who will then meet his other self in the next life and so on each time they die. And I always thought it was a really fascinating concept. Go on.
If I may, the same thing will happen when Dr. Bones McCoy dies, and he finds out that he was right all along, and the transporter beam disintegrates you and kills you every time, and the completely new person, just who happens to have your memories, shows up again in the afterlife. Unlike Engineer Scotty, who has been killed and resurrected 2 times canonically, once by Apollo and once by Nomad, so he's fine in the afterworld because he knows how to come back to life, because he's an engineer or something. He doesn't know how to do it, but the gods do, the energy beings do. So, which brings up another aspect to this question, because in a lot of science fiction stories, there are creatures who can control major aspects of reality. Although in the science fiction stories, they're usually natural creatures. Is there really a big difference between being trapped in the holodeck, being trapped by the Matrix, and being in the presence of, let's say, the Greek god Apollo, who's actually an energy being from another planet who can rearrange matter and energy according to his whim? Or the Squire of Gothos? If you're in the castle of the Squire of Gothos, he's in control of reality around you, right?
Mm.
So again, how would you know? And what could you do?
Well, I don't know what you can do. Certainly...
in the stories, these creatures are not omnipotent.
No,
there's always a weakness.
That's true.
But that's for a story.
But there's there's simulation theory that seems to be gaining some traction today, that our entire world is simulated, is a simulation from a higher order of reality. I don't know why they did it, but, And what level it's simulated to, I guess, remains to be seen. But that's
Well, it would explain why quantum mechanics doesn't quite make sense because the programmers didn't bother to make up anything to do with the subatomic particles cleverly enough to.
I
Now, I personally have the theory. I've looked into it, and I believe that the people who believe that are themselves holographic projections from another reality because they don't belong in this reality. So they live in a simulation, but I don't. I live in creation. Thank you very much.
I definitely
I'm willing to live and let live. I'm willing to meet them halfway.
I did
And to say that they're not real.
I did read a story where that was pondering this concept where the characters in it created a simulated world, and then the characters in the simulated world created simulated worlds, and so on down.
Yes.
And occasionally the simulated characters would figure out that they were simulated and work out how to signal up to the world above them that they knew what was going on. I wish I could remember more of it or the title, but it was...
I wrote a very similar story once called The Golden Age, so it may be. I'm not, but that's not the one. That's not
definitely not the one. But
yeah.
Huh.
But here's the funny thing: if you have enough control, if you have a high enough level of technology that you can control what you see and what you don't see, or if someone else has control of what you see and what you don't see, then in effect you're living in a simulation, whether you think you are or not. Now, the difference between that and if you have a clever enough system of censorship where every newspaper, everything that comes over the internet, everyone you talk to is all deceived by the same group of deceptions, the difference between that and being trapped on the holodeck is a question of substance, not a question of it's a question of how thorough it is. It's not a question of whether it's all fake or not. So the reason why these stories are interesting to us is that every reader knows or fears he knows a person who may be completely trapped in a false world of his own making in his own head. And some readers are self-aware enough to wonder if they themselves are trapped in a world of their own making in their own head. You see? That's why these stories are always kind of hopeful. Now, the stories are kind of what I call Gnostic. They're based on the idea that the entire universe is an evil deception and that you have to break yourself out. But like revenge stories or detective stories, usually in these stories, the guys do break out. They do find out what the reality is. So that's all quite hopeful, you see. And in the I don't want to give away the surprise ending, but Dark City had a more satisfying ending than the ending of the Matrix trilogy in terms of breaking out of the deceivers who were trying to manipulate you.
Well, they defeat the deceivers in the end, don't they?
I don't want to give away this. I don't want to give away the surprise ending.
Fair enough.
But yeah. But I would. But anyone hearing me would have already figured that out. So yeah. I'm in both of them. In both of them, the Neo, the prophet, the Messiah, does win. You know.
Well, they make peace with the machines and defeat Smith in the Matrix. In Dark City, that's different.
Yeah, and in my opinion, better.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
No.
Also, now I have to say, one of the most ironic versions of this story was in a Trapped in the Holodeck story, where Data asked the computer to make up a version of Professor Moriarty in a Sherlock Holmes story that was smarter than he was, and because it's Star Trek, the computer can somehow simply create an artificial being who is smarter than you are, and the being will have his own willpower and soul and
Data.
Right, and the Professor Moriarty immediately realizes what's going on, immediately takes control of the holodeck himself from the inside, turns it on, and deceives them into believing that they've left the holodeck, and that he has walked out of the holodeck and is walking the corridors of the Enterprise. See, and so they're deceived. Now, but turnabout is fair play, and this is a surprise ending. I don't mind spoiling. They eventually trap him again, even though he's smarter than them, by letting him think that he's succeeded in downloading himself and leaving the Enterprise and having an entire universe to go play around with and conquer. But he'll never harm anyone because he's only living in a box that's plugged into the holodeck. See, so the deceiver was deceived by his own deception. I just thought that was great. You know,
it is a good episode.
Now, I do think it's absurd to say yes, the computer can simply make someone smarter than Data by asking, why can you write a bestseller too? I'd like you to write a best-selling novel. Now I believe GP Chat is going to start doing that as of next month.
Apparently
But
so. Yes.
and then we will all be trapped in the holodeck. And we science fiction writers warned you not to date robots, not to let the AIs run everything for us. You think it's going to be convenient at first, but no,
It never ends
they're
well.
gonna. If you start giving orders, if you start asking people to deceive you, or if you start allowing them to deceive you, if you only buy newspapers that agree with your point of view, then the newspapers are just going to lie. They're all just going to turn into a passel of liars, and that in effect is what's happened in our real life. In our real life, we're kind of trapped in the matrix now, more than I've ever seen or could have believed imaginable when I was young, because so many people think reality is fluid. They think facts are matters of opinion, and they think matters of opinions are matters of fact. You know, so this philosophy of the Gnostic philosophy, the philosophy that all the world is a deception, and only your internal feelings of you affirming yourself and believing in yourself is the only reality there is in this world of deception. That itself is a deception. And if you welcome deceptions, then they will come. If you're willing to believe anything you're told, if you're gullible, then the matrix will be built around you slowly, one brick at a time. And then when the bricks are all in place, how are you going to get out of it? What are you going to do?
Yep.
Is it?
No, I agree. I suppose that raises the question. Well, these people, they seem to be, I've seen them referred to as magicians who practice word magic. They seem to think if you say something enough and declare it, it will become true.
That's one of my favorite words for them. Yes, they're magicians.
Which might work on a university campus, but doesn't seem to be working that well against Russia.
Yes, if you're making a very important point, and if I can interrupt to say something really frivolous, in the Piers Anthony novel, The Incarnations of Eternity, one of the main characters by mistake becomes the devil, and he has to fight God, and he has to, and death and time and love and earth are all members of his group.
Mm-hmm.
But the old devil doesn't tell him how to run hell, where the key codes are, or what the passwords are, or anything. So he simply tries to bluff his way, because the devil's the father of lies, and he manages to convince the devils that he knows the way to destroy them all, which the previous devil knew, the previous head devil knew, and they all believe him. And then later he realizes the previous head devil didn't know that at all, and that there is no devil-destroying infinite weapon that allows the ruler of hell to rule hell, that it's all just deception all the way down. So yes, that is where once you're in hell, once you're in the Matrix, it's just all the Matrix all the way down. The second movie in the Matrix, let me just, if I'm still speaking frivolously, could have been a lot better, because at the ending it was clear he was still trapped in the Matrix.
That was the implication.
But there, Matrix was.
That was the question.
The Matrix was that's the way I interpreted it. But the Matrix there was giving him what he wanted to believe, which was that he had broken out. It was just the computers giving him the illusion that he wanted to believe, because at the very end, Neo sticks out his hand and knocks all the computers, knocks all the evil robots down, just with a gesture. But that only works in the Matrix. That doesn't work in real life, because you can't hack real life. Neo can't do kung fu in real life. He can't do magic in real life. He can only magic in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Now, the third movie should have played up that angle, but instead the third movie was just the Wachowski brothers ran out of creative juice or something, or money, or they couldn't find the right writers, and so it crashed and burned.
There was
but the problem is, I've read a short story about a guy who's, as a political prisoner, was trapped in a illusion box in the Matrix, and what the tormentors did is they just let him believe he had escaped over and over again, and was trapped again. So when the time came that when he was really freed, he never believed it. He never trusted his lost senses ever again in his life. You see?
Ooh, that's insidious.
Horrible short story.
It would work. Well, they did the same thing in they did something similar in Inception, when Cobb's wife kills herself trying to escape from being in a dream, but she was in effectively the top level reality, so that didn't go well for her.
Inception is another film we should have mentioned, where the whole point of Inception is you don't know when you're asleep or when you're awake. There's supposed to be little things you can do, like spin a top, but if you're dreaming the top is spinning, then how do you know the dream is not making the top spin? And the ending of that movie is, in my opinion, deliberately meant to be ambiguous. It's meant to be disquieting. did he really find his kids again, or was that just his wish fulfillment operating?
And that was a very heavy-handed ending. I always liked.
I thought it was ambiguous. I thought it was not exactly clear.
Oh no! It was
whether he had made it or not.
It was clear.
You kind of hear the if you stay toward the end, you kind of hear after the screen goes to dark, you hear his little top clatter and fall over, which is a signal that he's actually in real reality.
Yeah. Oh well, I mean, like
but it's only a hint. It's not for sure.
It was a good ending. It was kind of a heavy-handed ending. I thought I liked. I thought it was better. I mean, it was just heavy-handed in the.
Doesn't the word heavy-handed mean that the author's trying to shove his idea down your face in an unsubtle way?
Yes.
But that ending was ambiguous. That ending was not shoving an idea down your throat. It was.
No, but it was. No, but it was
knowing which was which.
No, but it was shoving in your face the idea that, look, you don't know the answer to this. Ha ha! You don't know if he's really dreaming or he's really awake. Understand our clever and subtle metaphor.
You saw a different movie than I did.
That's fine.
Because that idea, that theme has to be. Anytime you do any of these movies, Dark City, The Matrix, Star Trek Holodeck, the idea is that you're going to lose track of what's real and what's not. And the question is, how do you find out what's real and what's not when you can't trust your instruments, when you can't trust what you normally use to find out what's real and what's not?
No, I agree.
And that question is just as good when you're awake as when you're asleep.
No, I agree. But I thought the ending of the 90s Arnie movie Total Recall did it better. Because right at the end, he's on the new Mars with the blue skies. He's the hero. Everything's come to an end, and the film just plays it straight. He's the hero of the story. Right. He's getting the girl. Everything's worked out, and then you think about it later, and you go, "Hang on."
Didn't the technician who plugged in the cartridge to give him the electronic dream mention those things?
Yeah,
which means that it's all a dream.
It could have all been a dream.
Worse than that, it means the whole spy plot was also a dream.
Potentially, yes.
And that he actually didn't murder anyone. He's still married to his wife, and he's just actually a construction worker. You see, it's hilarious. It's very subtle.
Yeah, he's at Recall.
I will take it back.
He's at Recall having a brain embolism, but they didn't like the end of Inception.
No. It's more subtle than that. The brain embolism was part of the spy story.
Well,
that didn't actually happen either. You see?
Potentially, yeah. But I mean, like at the end of the film,
what if he really is just a construction worker?
Exactly.
He's happily married to his wife, and he just goes in for an evening of electronic delusion.
Yeah.
And the whole spy plot is actually just within the delusion. Then he wakes up and everything's fine. He just had a good time. But nothing's wrong.
No, but I liked.
If he's the spy, he actually died in the chair or something. Or if it actually happened for real, then he wins and Mars has an atmosphere. So I will apologize to you and I will say, yes, you are correct.
Like
compared to Total Recall, Inception was heavy-handed.
Yeah, like
they did shove up your nose the idea that you don't know what's real and what's not.
I mean, that's okay. They made it clear and obvious that was the point. Whereas Total Recall didn't do that. They just told it as a straight action film. But at the end, you think back and you go, hang on.
Yeah, hang on.
Wait.
The technician said that would happen. The technician said that would happen, and that can't happen unless at least he saw it on the tape. So this has to be part of the tape.
Potentially, yeah.
You're right.
And it doesn't answer the question at all. I mean, Inception doesn't answer the question either, but it sort of jams the question in front of you. This doesn't even really ask the question till you think back on it, and then you may or may not put it together. You might just enjoy it as a mindless action romp, but there's this really deep ideas in it.
Even as an action romp, it's certainly not mindless. The idea that the only way to deceive a telepath is on the lookout for you is to bollocks your own memories. And then the idea that your bollocks self, once your memories are changed, might have a different personality and might not want to be you again.
Yeah.
You know, all that is really interesting. All that is really wild.
It's such a wonderful film. I love it. It's just such a great.
And then when Arnold is dressed like a fat old woman, and her head says "prepared for surprise," and she blows up.
Yep.
Now I do have to say something about the revised Total Recall movie that was made in. When was it made? I blanked it out of my memory because I.
More recently with
I've been
Yeah,
using the memory eraser helmet recently, and I can't remember where I put it,
that's fair.
but I don't remember when that film was made. So I was sitting in the audience when the commercial for that movie came up on the big screen. And this was back in the days when people watched films in theaters, you youngins, instead of on widescreen TVs in your living room. And in the movie, in the commercial, a guy who was not Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's this thin guy, perfectly fine actor, but he's not, he doesn't have the
Colin Farrell.
immense stage presence of the guy who played Conan, for example, is of course bewildered because his memory's been toyed with, and he goes, "I don't know who I am. Who am I?" And one wag in the audience said, "Well, you're not Arnold." And everyone erupted into laughter in the theater. And I said, "Look, it's like trying to remake Die Hard, that fine Christmas movie. There's just no way. I'm sorry, you can't remake Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You can't remake Gone with the Wind. And don't tug on Superman's cape, and don't spit in the wind, and don't remake an Arnold film." Okay? Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I watched the remake of Total Recall. It doesn't hold a candle to the original, but it's another one of those frustrating cases of the world looked really good. Like the world building and cinematography to build the world and stuff was really good. It's just the plot didn't really work. And unlike Total Recall, I don't think there's any doubt at the end of it that where it ended was where he really was. So, and in the We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, I think, is the Philip K. Dick short story that Total Recall was based on, and that he never leaves the chair at Recall, but he has all these other memories, and they're not sure what's going on because it's a slightly different take again. But
Philip K. Dick was really good at writing what I would call the metaphysical thriller, the paranoia thriller, where you don't know what's real and you don't know what's not, and you don't know who to trust. He also wrote the short story that Blade Runner was based on. His short story was called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" And he wrote the short story that Minority Report was based on. And I have to say, Minority Report is maybe the worst title for a science fiction film I've ever heard, because it makes perfect sense given the knowledge of what's going on. But the story is about whether or not you can punish a man for a crime he hasn't committed yet, if you can tell he's about to do it, if you know he's going to do it, And what does that kind of foreknowledge do to your free will, much less to your legal system? Once again, Philip K. Dick was adroit at writing stories that question the very fundamentals of reality. And I should mention,
he did take a lot of drugs.
I like science fiction stories. Yeah, well, he took his inspiration from A.E. Van Vogt, who was one of the big three of John W. Campbell's golden age of science fiction, when Analog was trying to do a different thing with science fiction that had been done in the pulps before. Now, there's a plus and there's a minus to that. I myself think the pulps were superior in many ways, but I'm also a big fan of Arthur C. Clarke style science fiction. And of the three of them, A.E. Van Vogt is the one who's most often forgotten. In fact, some people think that the big three were Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and Robert Heinlein. And of course, Arthur C. Clarke was not actually an Analog author. In any case, Van Vogt often wrote stories where the main character is flung into a situation where reality itself is up for grabs, and he's not sure who he is, or he's an amnesiac and he has to find out his own identity, or he's been bedeviled by time travelers who turn out to be himself, or things like that. He delighted in the idea of paradox and in the idea of suddenly having to shift your point of view, that everything you thought you knew turned out to be a deception. And Philip K. Dick kind of was inspired by this and took his own drug-fueled, hippie, mind-blowing take on this. But he wrote some pretty darn good stories.
Oh yeah,
from the movies we've just mentioned, and all of them deal with reality in some sense or another. Even Blade Runner, are the replicants real? Because if they're real, they're in a situation worse than slavery. But if they're just constructs, then what do we owe them? Do we owe them anything? Other than a merciful death? Because they're just machines. You see the problem? See, now the whole thing about the is reality real type short story. The reason why I find those kind of things fascinating is, in the stories they try to find out if you have some other method aside from your five senses, of figuring out whether reality is real or not. And usually in these stories, usually it happens in the holodeck or in the Matrix, is there's either someone on the outside who's trying to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Morpheus will come and give you the pill. Morpheus will come say, will expand your mind and bring you to the other world, the real world outside. And everyone loves that kind of thing because we all kind of secretly wish we could know the hidden truth of reality. Now, some people, I hate to say, get drunk on that. I think people like Marx got drunk on that idea and it overthrew his reason, and the entire nightmare of Bolshevik revolutions and bloodthirsty mania that followed from that was because of that drunkenness. Because it's just not a you're not that smart. I'm sorry, you don't know something that no one else knows. You know, you're not the secret woke. You're not enlightened. Okay. In fact, you're stupider than the people you're talking to. So shut up. I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. But in a story, everyone secretly wishes it were the case. The same way, in a story, everyone secretly wishes either to be Frodo or to be Conan, depending on your mood, depending on whether or not you want to be tempted by a hideous ring of power that you can't resist, or whether you just want to cleave a few skulls and smooch a few buxom tavern wenches or something. So, but in the stories at least, and this may be true in reality as well, there's always an inconsistency. There's always a lapse. You see the cat walk by twice in the Matrix because the Matrix has a glitch. Or, like I said, Morpheus, the Lord of Dreams, someone in dreams comes by and tells you that there's a bigger reality out there that you have to look for. Now, in real life, if you believe a false doctrine, if you have created a false world in your head, I firmly believe that you can reason your way slowly out of it. It's as difficult as Theseus trying to wind a ball of thread while he's being pursued by a minotaur to get out of the maze, and there's no guarantee you're not going to get more lost because some people do, you know.
They do.
But there's still some hope because reality is real. If there is a matrix and the matrix is inside the holodeck, and the holodeck is inside of the memory manipulation machine of the strangers or so on, there's got to be a final level. There's got to be reality that all this is based on. Because where else are they getting their ideas? You know,
it can't be dream machines all the way up.
It cannot be dream machines all the way up. At the top, there has to either be Buddha or God. I don't see any other option between those two. You know, I hope it's not Neo, because in terms of messiahs, he's not actually that impressive. I mean, I like Keanu Reeves, so who doesn't? You know, he's a swell guy, but he kills too many cops for my taste. Those poor people were completely innocent. Now, I should say, if they had established in the film that the cops you kill just wake up in another life, you know, because they don't really die if you kill them, then I would have been fine with that. But as it was,
I thought they handled that okay in the film because they said all of these people are trapped in the Matrix, and they're effectively your enemies, even though you're trying to help them, you're trying to rescue them. They're like, I guess
are you out of your mind?
No, but
you get to kill an innocent person because someone is manipulating him into fighting you.
I suppose in their mind it was something like
the ends justify the means. Is that
no? But like it's the German private in the bunker manning the machine gun at D-Day. He's the bad guy. You have to kill him because he will kill you if you don't. But I mean, he's not.
But he's in uniform.
He's in uniform. Fine, but I mean, he's the enemy and he needs to be destroyed. But there's no way this guy is. There's a reasonable chance this guy is not sort of the mustachio twirling villain in the process of executing the final solution with glee. He's just some poor dog face that's on the other side, stuck in this god awful situation.
You are way too generous.
Fair enough.
Logic cannot possibly apply to the Matrix because what that is every Marxist going back to the Gnostics of the Bronze Age and the esoterics of the Middle Ages thought that they were more enlightened than the Muggles, than the ordinary benighted people, and they think that everyone who doesn't serve their version of God, their secret God that only they know about, is serving the demiurge, is serving the devil. and is therefore an enemy, and therefore you may do anything you need to against them. Okay? Because all of reality is oppressing you. You're the underdog. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
So
I agree.
The reason, the way that jihadists in Islam and the way that Marxists in Marxism justify political violence against innocent bystanders who have done them no wrong and not offended them is they say these people are part of a system that oppresses us.
Actually,
Which
that's
is exactly what they said.
Actually,
in the
that's
Matrix
literally
movie.
what they say in the Matrix, isn't it? I guess I stand corrected.
Right.
Fair enough. No, you're right.
So now I do have to say, as an author, if you're going to write a Matrix movie, if you're going to write a movie where all of reality is against you, then yes, everyone is going to be your enemy because you can't go to the police because the police work for the enemy. You can't go to your father because your father's been taken over by the enemy. But I will point out that there are movies that have this theme that don't go the Marxist way of getting out of the Matrix, because the Marxist way is to shoot everyone and then turn into the Messiah. On the Truman Show, did you see the Truman Show?
I have seen the Truman Show. That's a great Jim Carrey film.
That guy is a great Jim Carrey film. That guy lives in a false reality.
True.
And he gives everyone pleasure. Has been raised by a corporation, so I guess they're his parents. I guess they're his father and mother. And nothing wrong with taking baby pictures, so it's kind of understandable. And yet, everyone is lying to him. Okay.
Yes.
Everyone except for like maybe one girl, one bit part actress once who blurted out something to him, and he fell in love with her. And so because of that, he wanted to go to whatever it was, Kathmandu or Aruba or something. The funniest bit of that, I think it was, I don't remember if this was in the movie itself or was only in the trailer, is the star Sirius A falls out of the constellation of Canis Major.
Yeah.
It's just a dome over his,
Yeah.
and lands at his feet. And he goes, how did that happen?
It's a light, yeah.
And every time he tries to physically leave the set, they arrange some disaster to try and stop him.
Yes, it gets...
And eventually he figures it out. You see, the inconsistencies build up. His desire for the truth is too good.
They've made him scared of swimming, and yeah.
At the very end of it, he gets to the door, and he says the same goodbye line he always says. And when the door closes, he's out of range of the cameras, and we, the audience, can't see him anymore. So we don't know what becomes of him, because once you're in reality, you're on your own. Now that was a very hopeful film because he was also trapped in illusion. He made his way out. People on the other side helped him out, and he also made it out by his own persistence. See. So if you're trapped on the holodeck, you gotta hope that Morpheus will show up, or that Dr. Schreiberg, if you're in the Dark City, that Dr. Schreiberg will help you. What a brilliant performance by that actor too. By the way, I believe it was Kiefer Sutherland, who just did a great job. And I haven't mentioned the name of the actor who was in Dark City, because I even though he's an actor I can't bring his name to mind at the moment. He was also in A Knight's Tale, and he was also in Cold Comfort Farm, but I can't bring his name to mind. Great actor. I think he should do more stuff. So there's a way out of the Matrix. What's that? Did you remember his name?
No, but I was going to say, so this raises the question, how do you get out of the Matrix? It sounds like you can't get out of the Matrix unaided.
It depends. Because in the movies I've just mentioned, all the heroes get help from someone. But they also have to persist and not be satisfied with the lies they're being told. Even if the lies are comforting to them. You see? Now, in the case of the Truman story, that's one of my favorites because he's motivated by love. See? He wants to get out of the illusion because the girl he's fallen in love with has gone away. Neo is a different case. Neo is just kind of dissatisfied with his dull 9-to-5 hacker job. You know, and he's interested in the wildlife, and he sees a rabbit tattoo just behind someone's ear and wonders if that's a sign that he should go down the rabbit hole and find the weird things in life. The Matrix was not made by guys who I think have a very healthy view of the world. Dark City is a little different. Dark City, the aliens are looking for something that human beings have that they don't. Which I'm not going to give away the surprise ending by saying what it is. But in all these stories, there's usually something in the person that makes them worthwhile to be deceived. You've got to be important, otherwise the newspapers will not be lying to you. Let me put it that way, and let me just say that in real life too. By the way, all you listeners who believe that January 6th was actually an insurrection and not just a peaceful gathering, yes, Someone thinks you're important. Someone thinks your vote is important or your action is important. Otherwise, they would not be lying their faces off to you, telling you lies that are so ridiculous that no one would ever believe them. But to get out of the matrix, you've got to be the hero. You've got to not accept the lie. You've got to be skeptical. You've got to question. But here's the thing that's really ironic. You've also got to have faith in the real world that you've never seen. You're in the position of the pilgrim of Christianity who has to believe in the celestial city that he's never seen. He just heard about it in a book. That told him how to escape the city of destruction. You see? So even these Gnostic kind of stories, Gnosticism is a Christian heresy. It's also other things, but part of it is a Christian heresy. But every heresy has to have a grain of truth to it, or else it wouldn't have any appeal. No one is really attracted to lies per se. Nor is attracted to a truth that has a little bit of lie kind of draped over it. Well, the reality of it is, you do come into this world surrounded by deception. You come into this world surrounded by original sin. You come into this world surrounded by people who will lie to you, and you'll lie to yourself too, which is scarier. You have to have faith that there's truth out there, and you have to have persistence. You have to have fortitude to look for it, and not to be too sad if it turns out to be a harsher truth than you thought. That's why a certain amount of humility is needed for anyone to study philosophy. Because the whole point of philosophy is you ask questions that you find uncomfortable yourself to see whether you can answer them or not. If you're a proud man, you're going to regard those questions as absurd. It's absurd for me to think that everything I think could be a lie. Well, maybe not. What if that's a lie too? You see? So, but I speak from personal experience. I used to be an atheist. I had a very coherent worldview. Every little detail was in place. I had completely deceived myself by something which I now regard as a very childish form of self-deception. But there was someone out there, there was a Messiah, I don't think he knows Kung Fu, who did come to my rescue, okay? So it happens. You're not, if you're being deceived, you're not entirely on your own. But you have to have a certain amount of persistence to try to claw your way out of the swamp. Because the deceiver is going to use every trick at the book. Agent Smith is going to come kick your butt if you try to upset the apple cart, if you try to question what the Matrix is trying to feed you. So it's your decision. You can either be a sheep or you can be a lost sheep, and you can find the shepherd or you can just go it on your own.
Yep.
And I don't recommend going it on your own if you can find the good shepherd. If you take my meaning.
I do. So
he will lead us out of the maze of deception.
Well,
because it comes from the outside.
Well, I guess I suppose the alternative is to take the path of the Buddha, and just ignore everything and just try to. Well, no, but he became enlightened through meditation or whatever. I don't know the story well enough.
Oh, here's what happened. I can tell you the story.
Sure, go ahead.
With deep apologies to any Buddhists out there, he was raised as a prince.
Oh yes, I know that.
Unlike our Lord born in a stable. And his father heard the prophecy that he would either be the greatest warrior or the greatest prophet of all time. So he showered him with women and wine and song and luxuries and kept away from him all ugliness and all unpleasantness. One day, out of curiosity, sneaking out of the palace, he saw an old man, and he was shocked that a guy could be old and wrinkled and horrible looking. He probably saw me. And then the next time he snuck out, he saw a sick woman. And he couldn't understand how anyone that their bodies could be a source of torment, because everything he'd ever seen in life was a source of pleasure. And the third time he went out, he saw a corpse, and he couldn't understand why the body wasn't moving anymore and where had the soul gone, and so on and so forth. He was so shocked that he realized that he realized his father had deceived him, and that in fact his desire for pleasure had deceived him. So he sat down underneath a bow tree and started to meditate. And as he meditated, the god of illusion himself and all of his daughters came to try to seduce him and distract him and draw him away from his ascetic discipline. But he was having none of it, because he's the world enlightened one. He's the Buddha. And he meditated until he found enlightenment, and he found the Four Noble Truths, which is that attachment or desire causes suffering, that the only way to rid yourself of suffering is by getting rid of detachment, is by detaching yourself from attachment, okay? And that the ego, the self, is the source of misery. So, and again, I apologize again for because I'm giving a very inadequate version of this story, but he found a way to achieve nirvana, which is windlessness, which is perfect tranquility. And this tranquility is so perfect that all the illusions of the world simply drop away from him. In the nirvana, there's neither life nor death, there's neither pain nor pleasure, but neither is there age nor youth, and even self and non-self goes away. So he enters into a perfect mystical state where he is at one with the universe. So now that's not a story that I think anyone should mock, either of the East or the West.
No.
There's something truly noble about that, because he's more stoical than a stoic, and he's not deceived by the lust of the senses. He's not deceived by the three things that tempted Christ: the lust of the eyes, the lust of the senses, and the glory of the world. You say, and I apologize to my Christian friends because I think I misquoted that quote too. He found a way out of the trap. Now, because I'm a Christian, I think that there's something beyond nirvana. I think there's a paradise filled with joy, where your self is not forgotten but fulfilled, where your nature is not expunged but is completed and made perfect by a God who is not, you're not at one with him because he's your father, but he will fill you with everything you need to be like unto him. That's still better than being a Marxist who thinks that you have to destroy the world in order to somehow create a utopia that's not going to work anyway.
Well, on that note, we need to find our way out of the illusion, and Christ will take us out of the illusion and bring us into the true light.
Correct.
So that brings
let me interrupt and just say, because the first thing the devil says is that Christ is the illusion. That there was no historical Christ. No man ever can come back from the dead. Don't be absurd. He's just one religion among many. And if you believe in him, you're a bigot, because we all know Christians are just bigots and so on and so forth. You're part of the patriarchy. So because Christianity is criticized for many opposite reasons, the first thing you have to do is decide whether or not you trust Christ, decide whether or not you trust reality, decide whether or not you trust the truth. You see, even if you haven't seen it yet, you have to believe it's there. And the same is true for a non-Christian who's merely a philosopher or merely a seeker after truth. You have to have faith the truth is there, otherwise you won't look for it. If you actually believe it's delusions all the way down, why live? So
what do you do? Well, on that note, thank you everybody for joining us. This brings the first season of Against the Mountains of Madness to a close, and we will be returning in the near future for season 2. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.